Good morning. This is Dan Wade, the State Treasurer's Office. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to the May 2021 edition of Ask Me Anything. This is your chance to ask anything you want. The Treasurer's opportunity to tell you what's on his mind. And without further ado, we'll have the Treasurer give us some opening remarks.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone. Sorry this was not yesterday, but yesterday was a very busy day with our first in-person Council of State meeting and since the pandemic started. And then lots of other activities at the Treasurer's Office. So we appreciate your flexibility in joining us today. And there's a lot going on. The pension plan just topped $118 billion. And that's been holding at that level for the last few weeks, which is the highest level in history. Secondly, we continue with the state health plan to work on clear pricing to get rid of secret contracts in health care for those that teach, protect, and otherwise serve, and taxpayers like them. We have a lot of things going on in the legislature, starting with getting the state pension plan and the health plan fully funded. Not only fully funded, but to get reimbursed for actual expenses for COVID-related activities, testing, treatment, and the administering of vaccines. As from the local government standpoint, we had a very intense 6-hour local government commission meeting yesterday, where we had a consent agenda, but we also had resolutions and non-action items dealing with the towns that we've recently had to take over and talk about other communities that are in trouble going forward, and had special items on there dealing with Randolph Hospital, Bald Head Island Ferry, as well as the Atrium. So a lot going on, and be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Treasurer. Those of you who have joined us before know the format. We just basically have a round robin. We would ask that you state your name and your media outlet before you ask your question, and we'll go ahead and open it up. So whoever would like to go first, go ahead and pop your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, it's AP Dillon with the North State Journal. How are you?
Hey,
Great.
AP, how are you?
Good. So I was wondering if the Treasurer can do a little bit of a recap on the Laurinburg situation, and if you would like to go over some of the counties that are considered to have critical issues going forward, so that maybe we could get an idea of if there would be another Laurinburg in the future.
Thank you, AP. As far as East Laurinburg is concerned, we don't have the resources to do this, but we've actually have their books in the Treasurer's Office as we've tried to determine thank you, where they are, who owes them, and who they owe. We have passed a resolution unanimously by the local government commission sent to the legislative delegation to deincorporate East Laurinburg. And that's all we can do. As far as other communities are concerned, we'll get you the unit assistance list. But just in yesterday's meeting, for example, this is going to sound like a Tom T. Hall song for you country music fans, but we discussed Pikeville, which we just took over, Robersonville, Eureka, Cliffside, Kingstown, Bethel, and other types of other communities. So we continue to work on all these through the local government commission.
Thank you.
And as far as the counties, the
utilities section of that are we seeing a serious problem with utility payments?
Yeah, on the counties. Right now, for different reasons. This could be governance, this could be reconciliation of the book, or this could be lack of audits. There are lots of reasons, but the counties are Allegheny, Anson, Bertie, Duplin, Edgecombe, Gates, Greene, Hyde, Johnston, and Lenoir. Madison, Northampton, Orange, Pender, Richmond, Robeson, Scotland, and Terrell. So, and that list is evolving. Now, you asked me a question about water and sewer districts.
Yes, I was wondering if some of these areas are having distressed situations due to their utilities issues.
Oh, they are. And for example, yesterday, I'm not sure if this is utility related. We can get you more information, but Benson, North Carolina, and Johnston County was brought up yesterday as having negative cash flow. So the utility problem is still exists, and what we find, for example, is that Eureka, people take showers in Eureka, and when that happens, that sewage is shipped to there's so many fairs and Monts and Fremont. Yeah, I think it's shipped to Fremont. Fremont processes it. The amount of sewage that Eureka is charging their customers is a lot less than the sewage they're paying to be processed. And then Fremont, if that's the right city, cannot process all the sewers, so they are sending some of it to another larger utilities commission. And in every one of these situations, and this occurs with Shelby Water and Sewer District, it occurs with Kingstown and Cleveland County, the Speaker's District. In every one of these situations, somebody owes somebody something. And just to put this in context, the amount of sewage that Eureka's charging for is possibly half as much as what they're paying to be processed, because of when it rains, we're actually processing rainwater in addition to sewage.
You have a follow-up, AP?
That was kind of the total question there, but I also kind of wanted him to talk a little bit about the pension situation. I understand during the council state meeting that he said that less are paying into the pension plan than are paying into it, or more people are getting money out of it than are paying into it.
Well, and I actually said this in the council state meeting because I used to stutter. I have to think about this twice before I say it. And what you said the first time was correct, and what you said the second time is what I'm afraid of. All right, so the correct thing, which you said the first time, was there's less people paying into the plan than are not. Now, what that means is that not everyone who's not paying in the plan is actually drawing a retirement check. We have over 100,000 people who are vested in the plan, and for one reason or another are not drawing a retirement check yet. So the proper way of saying it is that there are less people paying into the system than are not paying into the system. And this is a phenomenon, as I talked about yesterday, that we've heard all of our lives with Social Security. I guess when I was born, there was probably 1,000 to 1 people paying into the plan versus those drawing. And then we're down to 2.5 to 1 right now with Social Security. So I'm not saying that our trend is like that. I'm just saying that's the calculus of what we're talking about here. And the reason that's important to your readers, AP, is that the plan can only perk and is by employees paying into the plan, which is 6% of their salary, the employer that they work for, whether it's Treasury or DOT, paying in, which is about 16% of their salary, and then the investment gains. And then when you put all that together, that's what creates what we call the defined benefit. And for females who may come to work for the state when they're 18 or 21 years old or whenever, we are literally in a life expectancy situation now where they could literally draw more retirement checks than paychecks. And that's also a new phenomenon. So less people paying in the plan than are not, and especially females being in a life expectancy a blessing of a life expectancy situation when there's no minimum retirement age in the plan for people, for especially women, to be drawing more retirement checks than paychecks.
Do you have an idea what the impact of female life expectancy would be on the plan?
No, but it's obviously it's a good thing. It's as I said in the council state meeting, AP, lower interest rates are a blessing for home ownership and building businesses and buying cars, and investing in your mind. They're a terrible thing for pension plans. People being able to retire early is a blessing. People living longer is a blessing. These are all blessings, and I don't have the actuarial impact of your question, but other than to say that the majority of people in this plan are females.
Did you have another question, AP?
No, thanks. I don't want to hog them.
No, it's okay. Just stay on the line, and we'll go around the horn and then come back to you as you think about some other things.
Yes. So we'll open up for questions from others.
Hey, this is Dave Mildenberg, and I don't want to hog the questions either, so cut me off as necessary, because AP has much brighter questions. Dale, you mentioned the bill to try to get the state health plan fully funded and reimbursed for actual expenses. What does that mean? Help me understand that.
Thank you. It means two different things. One is pre-COVID and one is post-COVID. Well, let me rephrase. One is COVID related and one has been around for a long time. The one that's been around for a long time is that before any of us have heard of COVID, the General Assembly has not been funding the health plan in a proportionate way of how much healthcare costs are going up.
Right.
Secondly, before COVID, when they were doing their budget, they've been basically funding it at a 4% increase level, and that's also, I believe, in the governor's budget. So the governor's and the General Assembly's budget for the last several years has been to increase the appropriation to the health plan by 4%, even though our healthcare and pharmaceutical costs are going up more than that, and some specialized drugs, obviously, our health prescription drug costs are going up double digits. So when COVID hit so in the last biennium budget, they were going to, we'll check our numbers on this, but they were going to reimburse us at 3.68% increase one year and 5.02 the second year to average it out to 4% for each of the 2 years. But when COVID hit, that was not fully funded last year. On top of that, the General Assembly took $200 million out of the reserves of the state health plan last year to balance the budget. The reason that we have reserves is that our healthcare costs are going up at a faster pace than we're getting reimbursed for. So the fact that we're building reserves is phenomenal, and it's a testament to the executive director and the people at the state health plan, and to some degree our participants who are trying to be watchdogs and help us drive down healthcare costs. So that's all. That's pre-COVID. When COVID hit, just talked about the budgetary impact, but then we have or are expected to expend about $175 million specifically tied to CPT codes of the testing and treatment and the administering of vaccines. And that is, we have not gotten reimbursed for that, even after 3 rounds of CARE Act money. And, I'll tell you this morning what I've said publicly. I can't imagine anything falling more clearly into the criteria of what Congress and the federal government intended with this CARE Act money than for the testing and the treatment and the administering of the vaccines. And some people say, well, the vaccines are free. That's correct, but based on where you go, the administering the vaccine is not free in some situations. So some I've just talked about was pre-COVID with budgetary challenges, and now post-COVID, and we're and the governor in the governor's budget, I think he funded us at 4% for the state health plan. I'm not sure they did the catch up for the $200 million, but they put in tens of millions of dollars to reimburse us for COVID-related activities, not all of what we've expended. And then the governor's budget, $150 million toward our healthcare reserve fund.
So you're hoping to get a $175 million match from the federal government through the state DHHS or somebody to pay for your cost of treatment of vaccines.
We don't testing and treatment and administering of vaccines, and we do not want one penny more than what we're owed. Not a penny of COVID Care Act money, but the fully funding this pension plan, fully funding this health and pharmaceutical plan, these are what I should be considered and have always been considered for decades to be top of the line. Like, it's the top things that the General Assembly always funds. And not only are we wanting to be fully funded based on the inflation of what's happening to healthcare and pharmaceutical costs, we want to get these other costs reimbursed. We want to get the $200 million back that was taken out of reserves.
There's still a healthcare liability of more than $25 billion, right?
It's $28 billion because of what happened inside this building, and I say that because I know I'm dealing with some listeners here who have heard me enough for this to make sense when it comes out of my mouth. This unfunded healthcare liability, which, by the way, according to a few years ago, Pew Research, our liability on a per capita basis was behind Illinois. That's how severe this is. When I was sworn in, I think I inherited a $33 billion unfunded healthcare liability. Some of that liability is pinged to a discount rate that is published on the last day of June in the Wall Street Journal, because OPEB uses that discount rate to anticipate what inflation is going to be, and that sets forth this whole actuarial determination of what your present value liability is. So when that interest rate swings around a lot, your liability can swing around a lot. And what I'm most proud of, Dave, and I think you've heard this from me before, we just renegotiated our Medicare Advantage contract for 150,000 of our customers over the age of 65. That contract in the oven has the potential locked in to save $1 billion over 5 years. So when you're able to cut $1 billion off your expenses over the next 5 years, that has a big impact on your OPEB liability. So even though interest rates changed to the negative last year as far as this discount rate, we were able to cut on a net basis over $4.5 billion out of the OPEB liability, so it currently stands about $27.5 billion.
Gotcha. I wanted to ask about this. Your discussion yesterday with the Atrium Health, there was a lot of mention of staff recommendation. Does that mean you, or when you say staff recommendation, was that the treasurer, or was that a collaboration with the staff?
It's the LGC has its own staff, starting and has had for decades, and that was the staff recommendation was to accept letting them out of this swap. And as I said yesterday, we're taking over Pikeville and Eureka and Cliffside. We don't have the subject matter expertise to be experts in synthetic financial instruments. So I don't know. And as I think you heard yesterday, at the end of the day, what did this really save them? And So the staff, and there was an implied, there was an implication when it was approved in 2019 that as they undid this swap, that they would come back to us to sort of reverse this trade. We really shouldn't be in the business of doing that kind of thing. And secondly, on the bigger piece, as you heard a very robust argument, it's inexplicable why a entity that calls itself nonprofit has $7 billion in the bank and needs to borrow money.
Yeah. But thank you for that answer, but help me understand, the LGC has its own staff. You are the chairman of the LGC, but there are also obviously other elected officials on there. So the recommendation on the bigger piece of the funding, $600 million, was that your recommendation or was that the staff?
That was the staff's recommendation in consultation with me. I'll take responsibility as the chair and as the treasurer. With that, in that consultation, the staff recommended that not be approved, and that motion failed 5-3, I believe. And then there was a subsequent motion to go against staff's recommendation and to approve it, and that's what occurred.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really helpful. And the final thing is related to that is I heard them say that they expect to spend $3 billion in the Charlotte market over the next several years. Did I hear that right, or was that?
Wait.
Since I wasn't there, did that mean across North Carolina, or was that
No.
Charlotte?
The words left their lips in the Charlotte area, and then as you might remember, I have a very good memory. As you might remember, I came back and I said, "Well, is that for the med school or this other stuff or the acquisition?" And they said no.
No, for the medical school, you said?
Yeah, then I think they said this was $3 billion outside of all that.
Okay.
But we can have somebody in comms go back to the tape and get that piece of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I just it's very clear. And could I just one final question? As the COVID situation hopefully is improving, and you made this comment about reimbursement of funds and such. This is probably too philosophical for this short time we have here, but when you look as a state treasurer at the amount of federal funding that is coming into North Carolina, do you have a pretty good feeling for how that is being managed, across state government, that, including your own responsibility, but that, because it just seems like an unprecedented amount of money, and, it's over multi-years that it's being spent. I just kind of wonder if you are part of an effort, or is there much of a specific effort to really follow that money and track, how it's being used?
Great question. Most of your readers never win the lottery, and North Carolina's won it 3 times in the last year. And this amount of money is unprecedented. That's why it's frustrating that when we have actual COVID-related expenses for which this money was intended, that we can't get reimbursed. I'll also add to what the state auditor said yesterday, I believe in the meeting, or in the Council of State meeting, one or the other, that it's important to figure out if there's a structure and a strategy for spending this money without the state auditor having to come in 2 years later and expose people for how they misspent the money. It'd be much better to make sure that we measure 5 times and cut once when it comes to spending this money. And as it relates to my yoga mat as the state treasurer of North Carolina, and what I have the direct responsibility for, this is all part of a larger conversation about debt issuance. And, as people talk about needs here and needs there, and, money is coming or expected to come or has come to deal with some of these issues, it's just highly important to me as the keeper of the public purse to make sure the strategy and the structure is correct. And one thing, for example, is that something I've long advocated for is that, for example, the lottery profits, that 40% of the lottery profits, as originally intended in the law that was passed while I was sitting on the floor of the North Carolina House of Representatives, 40% of the profit needs to go back to public school construction, and it needs to be tweaked so that these communities don't have to tear down schools and build new ones when there's a lot of good school buildings across the state that have good bones to them. Most of you are not familiar with Old Town Elementary, but it's in Alt-Renolda Road. It was in my legislative district. It's a school that was on my garbage route, actually, when I used to be a garbage collector on Shadlawn Drive and Renolda Road. And, I can tell you when I was a member of the school board, that building had good bones. The legs and arms were tired. So they kept the main torso of that building and they put new legs and arms on it. And it's a beautiful building. So, Hayek and von Mises taught us that anytime you want to get more of a certain behavior, just reward it. I don't want these lottery public school construction money to specifically say you got to build new schools, because there's lots of opportunities across North Carolina, especially in depopulating parts of North Carolina, where repair and renovation would be just as valuable.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for hanging in there last night, Dave. I'm still waiting for my tutorial on those swaps. You said you were going to get that information from your son and explain that to me.
No, vice versa.
Hey Dave, this is Frank. If you write about a lot of the numbers the treasurer put out there and you want us to double check them, let me know so that we can make sure, because there's a lot of numbers been popping around, and even with the treasurer's excellent memory, anybody can get those crossed up. So let us know if you want us to double check some of them.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. We're open for further questions. AP, did you have something else that you were going to ask?
No, I think I've got enough so far. That's a lot.
All right.
But yeah, the pensions was the other question that I had, and he pretty much answered that one. I'm going to take a look at the UAL list, and wow, there's a lot of things in trouble here.
Well, we talked about yesterday in the local government commission. I introduced or talked to this about this concept of the quilt, and there's most of us have very fond visual memories of what a quilt looks like and what the history is. And the quilt at the treasurer's office has lots of squares in it, and every single one of them is important. Okay.
All right. So, if no one has any further questions, we'll have some closing comments from the treasurer.
Thank y'all for making the choice to join us today. I know you have a lot of choices about who you listen to and allocating the capital and to listen. And as I've said many times in the past, we're not trying. We think we are the most transparent agency in state government. We are trying to and think we probably are the most transparent agency in the United States. And it's particularly important, especially when we dealt with topics we dealt with yesterday at the local government commission, and some of the remarks I made yesterday at the Council of State. So our door and our heart and our mind remain open. We know that sometimes the questions that we get would point towards something that we could improve on, and we have no problem with that either. We're all about trying to figure out what's right, get it right, and keep it right on behalf of those that teach, protect, and serve, and taxpayers like them.
Hey, Dave and AP, just a note, if y'all want any point of the State and Local Government Commission, you're interested, did I hear that right? It is on our Facebook page where you can run it at any particular time of the meeting itself to listen to something that you might want to hear again. So you can find it on our Facebook page, and like I said, you can run whatever point of the meeting you want to.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it a lot. Take care.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a
We'll
good day.
see y'all next month.